called now required. So hopefully you've gone through and you've talked about or you've seen what the energy that we're looking for, where E is excellence, N now requires, E is effort, R responsibility, G giving 100%, and Y year round, okay? So we're gonna focus on the now requires section. On your traveling document, which is that full page, that white page that you have, I want you to take 2 minutes to write down your own definition of what you understand and know now requires to mean, okay? So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes time to go ahead and do that. So in that number 2 section, it says now requires, and it has some lines. I want you to write down what you understand and what your thoughts and definition is of now requires. What does that mean to you? Just keeping time, you got 1:15. Down to 50 seconds. We're not rushing, just keep your pace. We all good? Are we willing to share since we got some time left? All right, whoever would like to go first.
It means that, things can change, to reevaluate or check to see what is required at this moment. Check and see what is now needed or needs to be.
Gotcha. Ms. Simmons?
Okay, it's almost like rhetorical to me. I put on here what is required of me to do now. And, in the expectation to do what I need to do.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is kind of like the pre part, like what do I think, what do I know prior to us getting into having this conversation, okay? Because I really want us to focus in on where we're going as a whole school. So I want you to look at the board. It says, how are these 4 words connected? Give you time to kind of think for a moment. And I do want to hear from you. This is dialogue. I want us to have conversation. How are these 4 words connected for you? Do you mind if I sit? It's kind of weird sitting. I want to sit with y'all.
Please stop to meet it connected because it represents that, constant change that you're talking about when you say now required.
Okay. Anything to add, Ms. Simmons?
Yes. And this almost go back to the same thing a little. The transition, making that change, okay? What do I need to keep for restoration, okay, that works? And then from growth, okay, what can I do to, almost put it with the word modification. What can I do to grow, to improve, and then do it for modification?
Cool. So essentially, you ladies are exactly where I want y'all to be with the focus of change, right? So I want us to make 2 very specific connections. The first one being that these are all terms that we already use in our program. We use it to reference something that we do. So with transition goals, for example, in our SPED department, talking about setting up restoration meetings for our students when they're going back to their home schools, the accommodations and the modifications that we provide for our kids in this school, because we know that home schools can't necessarily give them an opportunity to just walk out of class or whatever the situation may be, but we are able to give them the accommodations that they need here. And then obviously the growth that our students show, whether it's over the past week, behaviorally, academically, over the past month. So these are words that we already use every single day that relate to the program that we're currently in. okay?
So, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
So with that being said,
Mhm.
okay, cause that's regard like more in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
but coming from the administration part,
Mm-hmm.
that's where that transition, making sure that I'm doing my paperwork,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to make sure I transit, restoration, making sure that they have everything that they're supposed to have, and accommodation, that's when I get with Mr. Savage
Mhm.
and everything, and do the modification, whatever we need.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so what I appreciate is that you added that we're talking that there's a change that's necessary at all levels. Not just the classrooms, not gen ed versus sped, but the entire program. The second focus or connection I wanted to make was, that what you guys all hit on the head, that these words are all synonymous or require change, okay? So the 4 words at the top, the first question was, how are they connected? And then Ms. Simmons and Ms. Pinckney both essentially got to change, and that's really what the focus I want us to have. And so the prophet Christopher Wallace once said, we can't change the world unless we change ourselves. And so I think that we get so comfortable sometimes, or uncomfortable, excuse me, we get so uncomfortable with change that we want to be resistant to it, right? However, the energy that's needed to mobilize the vision of LHA really requires us to change our mindsets, our decisions, our actions, and our levels of expertise, okay? And I kind of want to talk about the picture for a second, because this is my favorite growth mindset picture. When I was working in Somerville, I actually put this on my door as a part of a competition that we had, but it really is thinking about how we have to be intentional about the change, right? What season do you want to be in? Does that make sense? So what I wanted to do is make this practical for us. So even though we're resistant to change, we don't like change, I want to make it practical. Meaning, I want to talk about things that we've already done or are doing that have worked, all right? So the first part being that we have in-house staff members running workshops already. This is increasing our teacher retention as well as teacher attendance. So whether it's me with the new teacher academy or even Ms. Canopal with her SPED department meetings that they have, right? We're making sure that we're always teaching our teachers, and we're making sure they can stay in the building rather than having so many people take so many days off, right? But if we can nurture our people here in-house, which we are doing, then we can be able to retain them longer. Next thing I think is really big is that we are able now to have multiple meetings, multiple events that happen at the same time during the workday without a hitch. Whether it's National Popcorn Day, whether it's when we had the hot chocolate during December when it was winter time, we have all these different events that are going on without interruption. And then the last thing, or one of the many things that we have, is that we have more access to our wellness groups for our students. So because we took them from having 1 or 2 kids during a week, now they can see our kids on the floor in groups, and they have the opportunity to spread that information and that knowledge and to gain more access to the families even with the groups being on the floor. Do we have any questions so far? We all good?
Good.
Okay. So these are things, again, the changes that we've already implemented that are working, all right? So now I want to talk about where we are or where we have been as far as being reactive and how we want to progress beyond that, right? So what's listed here are 3 things that have occurred or are occurring that we're trying to fix, right, or improve upon. So for example, we have our support staff members getting calls in the hallway, right? That's reactive. We're waiting until things are happening while they're in the hallways to respond. Second example says that we're identifying preferred adults after referrals have been received by our students, rather than being able to get ahead of that, right? Again, reactive behavior. And then calling parents after referrals have been earned, if you will, by our students. So all of those behaviors, those decisions are reactive, okay? Rather than be reactive, we would rather be what? Proactive, okay? So I like this section is so proactive, right? So these are things that are occurring. Again, changes we're already implementing and more to come, right? So one, our support staff members are rotating through classes. So we're kind of moving them from just being in hallways to being in the classroom where they can have, again, access to the students and even supporting the instructional staff as well. Number 2, rather than waiting until our kids are here to decide who their preferred adults are, we're giving them wellness groups in advance. So they're being enrolled in those assignments before they even get started in the program. And then lastly, having the weekly parent wraps that our parent advocate does, and then the parent nights, hopefully be able to bring that back in as well. But our goal, I feel, as far as moving forward with LHA, is now requiring that we are preventative, not just proactive, okay? So we wanna have support staff members spending 20 or more minutes in each class, rather than just waiting or just rotating through. Using the reason that our students come to us as the opportunity to track that data. Why are you here? How can we assign you to specific groups that are gonna support your growth, so that we can make sure that we are collecting data that is relevant, right? And then lastly, including our parent engagement focus group sessions. Those are sessions that are planned to help our parents understand the language that we're using, so that when we're talking about MTSS, we're talking about the transition goals, we're talking about the restoration meetings, that the parents have the same language that we have and they understand what we're trying to communicate to them. Does that make sense? So we're at the place now in our program where reactivity is not an option. Proactivity essentially is kind of where we are, but we want to move into preventative measures. We want to get ahead of the things that we can. Does that make sense? I want you guys to understand that it has been very much so embedded, I think, and instilled in us that we are now in a place where these things are mandated as far as our preventative measures. Are we all good? Okay, I just want to make sure we understand that, again, the mission for LHA now requires us to be preventative. I think we were trying to get away from reactivity and and get into being proactive, but now we have to be preventative, okay? So just to wrap us up, the great Morgan Freeman says that we should challenge ourselves. And so I think that with the energy that's required moving forward, we have to choose the path that leads to growth, which is that it's going to challenge us. So that means that we have to really be reflective and make sure that, okay, now I know I used to do these things, and they may not have been the most productive, they may not have been the most helpful, beneficial to the program, but we have to really push ourselves into transition, push ourselves into restoration and growth, okay? So just in conclusion, I have an exit ticket for you all, so that you guys can provide your feedback. And I think y'all have seen it in the other session, maybe perhaps. So on the back is just simply asking you now, after going through the presentation, what do you believe, what do you know and understand now requires to mean in terms of us mobilizing the vision for LHA moving forward? What does it mean to you?